After a relatively light summer, fall has descended upon us at last, bringing down with it the weight of a full seasonal anime lineup. There are plenty of good ones to choose from right now, but that only makes it harder to pick out the true cream of the crop at a glance. That's why you come to me, though. With my natural talent of having a job that lets me watch anime all day, I've been able to sort through the lot of them and narrow down the 10 anime that I think are most worth your time. These are the ones to watch for fall 2020, brought to you by nobody this time, because I wanted to reserve this seasonal spotlight for something that's actually important. Low wages, long hours, and exploitative contracts are sadly the norm in Tokyo's animation industry, where salaries average $800 a month and 90% of new animators quit inside 3 years. For years now, the Animator Dormitory project has helped up-and-comers find their footing in this brutal business, but for all the good the Dormitory does, they're ultimately just slapping a band-aid on a huge systemic problem that requires a systemic solution. Which is why they're now using Kickstarter to spearhead the 2020 New Anime Making System project. Their first goal is to animate a music video set to an original song from some of the biggest musical and vocal talents in the English anime sphere, including Mason Lieberman, Kevin Penkin, Donna Burke, Amanda Lee, and the very best like no one ever was himself, Jason Page. More importantly, the animators making this video will be paid 2 to 4 times the industry standard rate. In the long term, they're aiming to establish their own studio that will attract talented artists with its healthy wages and working conditions. Already, they've pulled a heck of a team together, with Shintaro Doge, director of the bangin' Osomatsu-san and Sangatsu no Lion OPs at the helm, Shingo Tamagawa, Masaki Tanaka, and Kenichi Kutsuna providing key animation, and digital anime pioneer Shingo Yamashita compositing. This is sure to be an absolute stunner of a music video that any anime fan would be proud to own a piece of, or be credited in. And hey, what a coincidence! Those are some of the rewards you can get for backing it on Kickstarter. Because, of course, they can't achieve any of these noble goals on their own. They need help from as many anime fans as are willing to offer it. I've already kicked in $500, and I know you guys are some of the most generous and passionate otaku out there, so I'm calling on you to do your part as well. Together, we can make a real, positive difference in the anime industry. Click the link in the doobly-doo to pledge your support or learn more. Now, since we're already on the subject of bangin' anime OPs in general and the digital animation talents of Shingo Yamashita specifically, I suppose it only makes sense to start with the most obvious recommendation of the season, Jujutsu Kaisen. It's rare that you'll go wrong with a new Shonen Jump action anime, but it's nearly as uncommon to see one get it this right off the bat. Yuji Itadori is a laid-back high schooler who spends his afternoons chilling in the occult research club and his evenings visiting his sickly grandfather in hospital, which leaves him little time to cultivate his natural-born athletic talent. Though, given the casual ease with which he shatters world records, there's likely nothing natural about it. When his clubmates, thinking they're just fooling around, end up breaking the seal on a very real, very cursed object and calling a monster to the school, Yuji ends up proving his supernatural potential by eating that curse and using its power to save them. Immediately afterwards, in reward for his heroism, he is condemned to die by the Society of Jujutsu Sorcerers, because it turns out that he ate one of the 20 fingers of the King of Curses, Sukuna, and there's a teeny tiny possibility that the ancient evil could possess him at any moment and use his body to do some war crimes. However, Satoru Gojo, the strongest Jujutsu sorcerer, self-proclaimed, though no one has the balls to argue with him, convinces the higher-ups to stay his execution until the whole of Sukuma is collected so that his millennia-old curse might finally be destroyed once and for all. And in the meantime, Yuji gets to go to Jujutsu school. So what is Jujutsu? To put it simply, it's a kind of sorcery that uses the power of curses to fight other curses, an important calling that protects innocents from certain death, but also condemns its practitioners to lives of anguish and struggle. It is both a fun risk-reward power system and a very singular job description that's best suited to driven, self-determined, marginally crazy individuals. In other words, it's the perfect excuse to pull together a cast of eclectic shonen battle heroes with big personalities, including an action panda. Boy, I miss Ranma. Jujutsu Kaisen is an absolute joy. It immediately carves out its own niche in terms of tone and style, an odd intersection between the dark supernatural action of Bleach and the anarchic attitude of Haikyuu. And it complements that tone with the impeccable action direction of Sungho Park. This anime is every bit as Sakuga-packed and fun to watch as his last work, The God of High School, and its slower pacing actually gives those amazing fights room to breathe. Which is a luxury that not every anime character this season gets to enjoy, he said ominously. Talentless Nana tells the tale of another school for superpowered adolescents where they train their abilities, called talents, to one day take on the mysterious and monstrous enemies of humanity that have hidden themselves among the human populace. Of course, such schools are prime targets for these hidden foes, which lends the series a delightfully tense air of paranoia. Any student could be a killer in disguise. This anime sure is lucky to be coming up at the height of Among Us fever. As a mind reader, new student Nana Haragi is uniquely positioned to help with this problem, and she quickly gravitates toward Nanao Nakajima, a pure-hearted natural leader who doesn't appear to have any talent beyond that, and that's kind of holding him back in the class's social hierarchy. If you've seen an anime, you can probably guess there's more to him than that, and maybe even guess what that more is. But there's also more to this plot as a whole than the standard Mahoka Index gimmick. Of course, it would be a big spoiler, given the nature of the show, to explain what exactly that more is, so feel free to use the chapters in the description to skip to the next recommendation if you've heard enough to just jump in already. If you're still listening, I'll assume that you're down to hear that the school is a big scam, actually. The real enemies of humanity, as designated by our governments, are the talented children themselves, who are too independently powerful for the state to control. So Nana, who is not a telepath, just a regular old sociopath who can read people, has been sent in undercover to covertly murder them all. And the show is all about her doing that, sussing out the strengths and weaknesses of each student and finding creative ways to kill them while trying to hide her killing spree from the more astute and suspicious among them. So, yeah, it's My Hero Academia meets Among Us from the imposter's perspective, with superpowered hitman accident kills. And while it's not the best animated or directed show of the season, that premise alone is enough to have me utterly hooked. Not every anime needs a novel concept, mind you. There's something to be said for good execution on a truly classic formula, and I don't think any franchise in any medium embodies that truth more thoroughly than Dragon Quest. You got heroes going on journeys to defeat Dark Lords and bring peace back to the world, encountering colorful characters and creatures alike along the way, some of which join them in their quest. All that gets boring fast in your average isekai series, but dress them up in the iconic art style of Akira Toriyama, and suddenly these cliches take on an irresistible, timeless charm. Dragon Quest, Dai no Daibouken, captures that charm beautifully in anime form. Its story is as simple as they come. For a long time, the world was terrorized by a powerful demon king and his army of monsters until a hero rose up and defeated him. Freed from his evil influence, the monsters settled down on a small island, where they eventually discovered a distinctly Dragon Quest protagonist-looking baby washed up on the beach. They raised that boy, Dai, as one of their own, and he spent many happy days running carefree through the forests and plains of the island, learning magic from his Uncle Brass, until other humans began landing on those same shores. Violent thugs masquerading as heroes and scheming politicians grasping at power throw Dai's peaceful island home into chaos, and they are mere portents of the deeper darkness lurking beyond the horizon. which is a Demon King, naturally, backed by, I believe, a bigger, tougher Demon King. Also a whole mess of monsters, obviously, but Dai's got a sword and magic and not Pokeballs, and the OP's telling me he's gonna befriend the guy with magic skills and the lady with the magic gun, and they're gonna use those things to fight those other things. And with Toei's combination of hand-drawn animation and surprisingly solid 3D visuals, those fights are gonna look pretty cool. This is just a classically cozy anime, similar in tone and general appeal to Mahojin Guru Guru. It's not gonna blow your mind, but it is a guaranteed good time, and sometimes that's all you want from a show. That said, if you do want a bit more from your fantasy, this season offers plenty of good alternatives. Kuma 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 Bear and By the Grace of the Gods provide a weaker blend of simple escapism in a moe isekai package. I'm Standing on a Million Lives and King's Raid competently tackle a darker brand of swords and sorcery. And if you enjoy stories of road trips through fantastical lands, Majo no Tabi Tabi, or The Journey of Elena, is a laid-back, lighthearted delight. With beautiful animation and art, it's many otaku's favorite show of the season, though speaking personally, its characters have kind of failed to grab me thus far. I'd say it kind of feels like Earthsea without the character arc. The other pure fantasy show this season that did grab me, The Sleepy Princess in the Demon Castle, grabbed me hard. It is instantly and irresistibly charming, and its core premise isn't that far off from Dragon Quest's, actually. All was well in the fantasy kingdom of Good Rest, until one day the Demon King kidnapped their princess, leaving a brave, spiky-headed hero with no choice but to venture forth and rescue her. That's gonna take a minute though, and in the meanwhile, the princess doesn't have much to do besides sleep. And that is what this whole anime's about. Her sleeping, or trying to, anyway. It is easier said than done in a demonic dungeon. Her cell's furnishing isn't unpleasant, but it's cheap. Low thread counts, thin padding. How's a delicate debutante supposed to nap in these conditions? The Demon King has at least provided her with some adorably fluffy teddy demon guards, though, and it turns out those teddy demons are easily bribed with brushies, so she routinely escapes her cell on a quest to make the best bedding she can from what's available in the castle. And also take whatever she can't make, by force if need be. Even if that means breaking a priceless magical artifact to turn it into an air mattress, or straight up decapitating a guy so she can sleep on his silky smooth corpse. Basically, this is the Peach sections of classic Paper Mario, if Princess Peach was a narcoleptic axe murderer. And with Yoshiko Nakamura and Mitsue Yamazaki, the writer and director behind Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, bringing that fantastic concept to life, the sleepy princess in the Demon Castle never stops being hilarious. If you've been missing Konosuba, this is the show to keep an eye on this season. Now, on the other hand, if you're more into the politically charged, technology-infused fantasy of the second franchise that comes to mind when I say JRPG, this season still has you pretty well covered, actually. Our Last Crusade, or The Rise of a New World, tells a Romeo and Juliet tale set against a war between a futuristic empire and an oppressed republic of witches, which is a cool idea, though its world building is a bit wishy-washy for my taste. Personally, I'd suggest checking out Magatsu Warheit Zuerst instead. In a world once devastated by a magical apocalypse, the Magitech-fueled Warheit Empire maintains order with an iron grip. Leocardio Weller is a new recruit to the nation's army, whose top-notch sword skills have distinguished him despite his inexperience, and whose future looks as bright as one's future can look in a military dictatorship. Little does Leo suspect when he stops to help a young trucker, Inumael Groner, load up his deliveries for a day, that it will do far more to change that future than just make him late for orientation. See, Leo accidentally throws in an extra bit of cargo that wasn't on Inumael's manifest, which wouldn't be that big a deal if that cargo weren't high-grade magical artillery that some smugglers were hiding in his warehouse. Knowing that the Imperial Diet will make an example of him if he's left behind, the smugglers choose to bust Inumael out of jail when they come to liberate the weapon, which leaves him with a choice: join up and do more crimes, or die. What he doesn't realize when he takes the obvious path is that he's setting himself on a collision course with Leo, and their inevitable impact will reverberate around the entire world. I love stories like this, of unwitting individuals caught up in political machinery and chains of causality far too immense and chaotic to comprehend or control, cascading out from seemingly insignificant coincidences toward destinies far greater and darker than they could have ever imagined. I love characters like Anumael, who instantly reminds me of Black Lagoon's Rock, and like Leo, because it's fun watching naive optimists run up against the realities of war. Most importantly, I just love worlds like this. I absolutely dig the anachronistic Magitech aesthetic. It's always cool to watch sword guys fight gun guys. Political intrigue is my jam, and I am super down for how the show drops us right into its story with minimal exposition. This anime low-key feels like something Yasumi Matsuno might write, and Naoto Hosoda's cinematic directing style fits that really well. I was not expecting a mobile game adaptation of all things to grab me this hard, but here we are. Conversely, I did fully expect to be taken in by Moriarty the Patriot. I love me some Sherlock Holmes, so the prospect of a series digging into the mind of his most infamous nemesis instantly had my attention, and when I learned it was being directed by Run with the Wind's Kazuya Nomura, my hope only grew. Luckily, I was not disappointed. So, how do you turn the world's most dastardly and also only criminal consultant into a hero? It starts with a compelling, believable motivation, and as an upper-class mathematician who finds himself increasingly disgusted with the rampant inequity of the British Empire and the way that London's nobility exploits and abuses her citizenry, this take on William James Moriarty has that down. He's not just a natural-born criminal out for profit and pleasure, but rather a calculated saboteur, aiming to undermine the upper crust and burn this unjust world to the ground, that a new one might be built in its place. This more complex motivation also serves to inject an element of mystery into a series that might otherwise have strayed too far from the essence of Sherlock Holmes. Moriarty's own deductive capabilities are nothing to sneeze at, and he uses sound logic to uncover the crimes of his fellow nobles. But rather than turn the culprits over to Scotland Yard, where they'd no doubt just buy their way free, Moriarty follows up his investigations by helping their working-class victims attain airtight vengeance. And the end results are deeply satisfying to watch for, no reason besides the nice animation and art. This is a dark and dramatic series with a suitably grandiose and menacing atmosphere about it. If you're into looming lamplit gargoyles and thick fog hanging heavy on sometimes bloodstained cobblestone, you will love this anime. If, on the other hand, you prefer that your lamps cast their romantic glow across soft beds of snow that are also soaked with blood, Tonikaku Kawaii, or Tonikawa for short, may be more your speed. This anime is a rip-roaring romantic comedy about the dangers of naming your kid something stupid. Nasa Yuzaki has been asked every day of his goddamn life if he wants to be an astronaut, and thus finds himself compelled to reach for the stars in every other possible way. He wants to make sure that when you think of NASA, you think of those space assholes second, and thus far, he's made pretty good progress toward that goal for a teenager, with a first-place score in the national mock exams and a ticket to any high school he could possibly dream of. Then, he sees her. Breath catches in his throat as hers hangs in the air. Snowflakes sparkle in her auburn hair. He shoots for the moon with courage and pluck, for love has hit NASA like a 10-ton truck. No, wait, that was an actual truck. She saved him from it, though, and she's totally fine, somehow. Not him, that's a lot of blood he lost, but he can't rest now, because if he does, she'll be gone forever. The power of love and adrenaline helps NASA hold his shattered bones together just long enough to give her his name and ask her out, and she says yes, if he'll agree to marry her, and I will let you guess for yourselves, based on NASA's past track record of impulse control, what his answer to that question is. From there, his whirlwind romance with this lovely, either alien or maybe literal moon goddess, it's not entirely clear, takes off like a rocket. After she disappears for 5 more years, that is. Bit of a communication gap there. But he waits for her, a little too dutifully, honestly, dropping out of high school in the hopes of maybe catching her while working part-time at a convenience store. And when she does eventually come knocking on his door, they are both ready and eager to start their new life together. Though it's gonna take them both a bit of time to figure out exactly what that life will look like. Tonikawa is both hilarious and adorable in its unwavering sincerity. It's a real feel-good show, and if you like a little love in your anime, there's only one series this season that I'd recommend above it. That show is Adachi and Shimamura, a show about 2 teenage slackers who skip class to sit alone together in their own little world on the little-used 2nd floor of their school's gym. You know, just 2 girls hanging out next to a ping pong table, using each other's laps as pillows, cause they're not gay. Like, come on, who hasn't dreamed about kissing her best friend before? Actually, they don't even know for sure if they are best friends yet. They're both still just feeling things out, you know, in a completely platonic, heterosexual way that just happens to involve thinking about each other all the time, sharing indirect donut kisses, and committing acts of public indecency together. Also, there's a time-traveling alien, or possibly just a kid in a spacesuit, following them around everywhere. Don't worry too much about them, though. They're just kind of there. And why would they not be? These are 2 immensely likable, entertaining characters. Adachi's a bit of a loner, whereas Shimamura's a little more outgoing and friendly, and they have amazing chemistry together. They both really enjoy being together, too, though neither can seem to quite suss out just how together the other one wants to be. It is a lot of fun watching them fumble through their feelings. If I was a bored alien, I'd be hanging around to see how it turns out too. As shoujo ai series go, this isn't quite as complex or nuanced a character piece as Bloom Into You, but it's certainly more subtle and substantial than the dumb Yuri fun of this season's Assault Lily Bouquet. Adachi and Shimamura captures the pangs of adolescence and the waning days of youth beautifully. That tension of liking someone but hesitating to say you like them, because what if they don't like you like that back? I mean, you think you have a shot, but you could easily blow this whole thing if you're wrong and you shoot it. Depending on where you're at in life, this is either gonna dredge up some powerful nostalgia or just make you miss your present friends. This is another immensely cozy show. Lo-fi lesbians to chill/sleep to, basically. Just the thing to take one's mind off the possibly impending end of the world. Yota Narukami could probably use a little bit of that right now. A young girl dressed like a nun and claiming to be Odin just informed him that there are 30 days left until the apocalypse, and while she proves within seconds of meeting him that she's not above fucking with him, her uncanny ability to predict the weather and call horse races seems to suggest that there's more to her claims than pure Chunibyo delusion. The Day I Became a God is the newest PA Works original anime from Angel Beats and Charlotte writer Jun Maeda, and while based on that pedigree, it could easily go downhill at any moment, especially with Charlotte's Yoshiyuki Asai directing, it is off to as strong a start as either of those series. Maeda is a funny man when he wants to be, with an impressive talent for creating unique and instantly memorable characters, and that talent's put to very good use here. Yota is an immensely likable, outgoing, straight-shooting kind of guy, while Odin strikes a fun balance between omnipotent condescension and childish indignation against anyone who dares to question her incredibly sketchy story. It is a blast watching these two banter, and the supporting cast of characters who drifts in and out of their story, like Yota's friend Ashura and his childhood crush Izanami, mix well with their character dynamic. The first episode had me rolling with laughter from beginning to end. Now, this being a Jun Maeda joint, there's no guarantee it'll carry on as it began. He really likes pivoting from comedy to tragedy, and given the inherently bleak subject matter of the show, and the fact that it's tagged as a drama, I fully expect The Day I Became a God to follow suit. Whether that's a good or a bad thing will depend largely on whether this show sticks the tricky landing or faceplants at the finish line. Maeda has done both, and while I'm dreading a repeat of Charlotte, I would love it if another anime could hit me the way Angel Beats did the first time. Regardless of the final outcome, Maeda's shows are always worth keeping an eye on for their novel concepts and bold story direction. This will either be one of the season's best or an absolute train wreck, but either way, it's gonna be a lot of fun to talk about. Not as much fun as our final recommendation of the day, though. Akudama Drive is simply built different, and it hits different, too. Set in the neon-soaked streets of a far-future Kansai region that has been nuked, conquered, and colonized after a war with Kanto, this series offers a mix of Ghost-in-the-Shell cyberpunk and Kekai Sensen craziness that I didn't know I needed and can't get enough of now. I mean, in the first bit of the first episode, a guy rides a Spider-Man motorcycle up a building, and it just keeps escalating from there. Like Magatsu Warheit, this series completely drops you into the deep end of its world, offering no explanation, initially, as to why folks might be praying to the Shinkansen, or how there are people who can beat up armed robots or hack banks in seconds just for funsies. The titular Akudama, supercriminals whose potential sentences are measured in centuries, are clearly not normal, physically or mentally speaking, but that's about the only thing that's clear about them. And if you think you're confused, just put yourself in ordinary person's shoes. Well, that's the name she's credited under, but after an absurdly bungled attempt to return a dropped coin and then save a lost cat inadvertently thrusts her into a world of mad doctors and literal cutthroats with a bomb wrapped around her throat just to add insult to injury, our nameless heroine takes on the Akudama epithet Swindler in hopes that it'll convince all the murderers around her to turn their attention elsewhere. And it works! She fooled them all, so now all she's gotta do to save her skin is help Kansai's most dangerous criminals pull off the craziest heist in history. No biggie, you got this, girl. If the concept of an incredibly unlucky ordinary person struggling to survive amid a pack of decidedly extraordinary and eccentric potential killers sounds oddly familiar to you, that's probably because it's a recurring theme in Danganronpa. And those games' creator, Kazutaka Kodaka, also cooked up the original story concept for this anime. He's not writing it himself, sadly, but with Gakko Garashi creator Norimitsu Kaiho taking those reins, his characteristically zany characters and concepts are in very good hands. And as you've already seen while I've been talking it up, Studio Pierrot and director Tomohisa Taguchi have been having an absolute blast bringing this world and those characters to life. This is one of those shows that squeezes every drop of fun it can out of every action scene and comedy beat, and along with that fun, it oozes cool from every frame. We're not exactly hurting for badass original anime this year, but it never hurts to have one more, especially not when that one is this good. There you have it. Those are the 10 best, or at least most promising, new anime of the fall season. Though there are a few older ones that bear mentioning as well before you go. Haikyuu is back for its finale, and that is one of the best anime ever, so watch it if you're not. The Dragon Daughter in the new Danmachi season's absolutely adorable, so that may draw your attention back to that show. Mahoka also exists again. Best of all, from my nostalgia-blinded perspective, after over a decade away, both Higurashi and the Adventures of Kagome Higurashi are back on TV. And those of you who are too young to remember their original runs may be wondering how those new series are. To me, Yashahime Princess Half-Demon feels like a proper spiritual successor to the anime that kinda defined my whole adolescence, so I'm pretty stoked about that. If you've never seen Inuyasha, I think it's a pretty good jumping on point for the franchise. The new characters are really fun and have their own distinct dynamic with each other that feels separate from what the original series did, but you will probably enjoy it more if you go back and catch up on that original first. It is a classic. As for Higurashi, you definitely can watch this new series, Higurashi no Nakukoro ni Go, before you watch the original. It does retell the plot of the first anime that they made. It is not a remake, though. It's a sequel, kind of. It's complicated. Ryukishi 7, the man who single-handedly made the original light novel that spawned this whole franchise, is a mad genius in the truest sense of both words, and his series plays a little fast and loose with causality, so yeah, this one will probably be a bit confusing for newcomers, but being confused is part of the fun in Higurashi, so enjoy the ride and consider going back to watch the original series for extra context. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite anime of the season are, and while you're down there, don't forget to click that Kickstarter link and pledge your support to the new anime making system project. Also, go check out the Basement Life podcast if you haven't listened to it already. Yazzie and I took a break last week so that I could focus on making, this. But the last 2 episodes are hilarious if you haven't seen them already, and a new one is coming soon. I'm Geoff Thew, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.